We'll also be talking a little bit about how they could be used to attract learners, so children or adults for your educational organisation. But the main focus really is going to be on using lead magnets to attract parents. My name is James Digby. I'm the Managing Director of Bright. We are a marketing agency for the education sector. So we work with schools, trusts, independent schools, exam boards, digital education companies, a variety of different organisations. The main theme is that they have to be in the education sector, and typically they look to either attract people to their organisation to become staff, members of staff, or they're looking to attract people who are parents, pupils, customers, clients within the sector. So we're looking at this today from the point of view of how can you provide some kind of value to your target audience so that you can engage with those people. I have seen through different sectors this often referred to as lead magnets, so we're using that title, but I have also seen in the education sector quite often people refer to this as value add marketing, so providing some kind of value through your marketing to people to encourage them to engage with you. I do have a chat window in the bottom right hand corner that you can use at any point to ask me questions, and I will make sure that there are some slots at the end that are available for people to jump in and ask me some questions, and we'll also send you out an email afterwards, so do feel free to come back to me if you've got any questions that you suddenly think of once the session is over. So typically this area of value add marketing or lead magnets is associated really with other sectors. It's associated with the sale of a product, typically through e-commerce, but we have seen an increase in the last 5 years or so in people using this as a method to sell services, and that's slowly moved across to the education sector for people looking to sell education in a variety of different formats. In this particular situation, we're using it to encourage people to engage with you, and in particular your digital marketing, so that you can increase that return on investment. The reason that's really important, we are going to kind of come on to, but I think it's really important to start off by just explaining why this applies to recruitment marketing and corporate marketing. In particular, because as I say, we do cover both areas. So from a recruitment marketing point of view, we're seeing that people are moving away from this feeling of trusting organizations, schools, businesses, and their pitch to them about why they're a great place to work, and therefore they're engaging less with marketing for recruitment purposes. And from a corporate marketing point of view, we're seeing a significant shift, definitely in the last 18 months, of the number of times people need to see something before they really register it and they take some kind of action. So we know that about 18 months ago, the number of times people needed to be presented with marketing was between 7 to 10 times. That's nearly doubled over that kind of year and a half, really. And a good portion of that is because a lot of people during the pandemic, they moved their marketing online. So people are far more bombarded with these kind of sales pitches constantly. So it needs to apply to these areas, because you need to come up with a new way to get engagement from people so that you're not just repeating the same thing time and time again. So it's really important to consider this for two key reasons. So if you're needing to persuade other people within your organization why you need to use this approach, we know that at the moment, and for the last year at least, about 70% of candidates, so if you're using this to attract people to your job vacancies, about 70% of candidates are passive at the moment. So they're actual applicant numbers. So 70% of all of the people that have gone on to apply for a job, those people originally weren't actively looking. And we know that in the world of marketing, parents in particular, they're getting bombarded from multiple directions. So every time they go online, they're being presented with adverts for a mattress, adverts for a school, adverts for new food products, new local events, international items and so on and so forth. People are really getting bombarded from multiple angles about multiple things, and a lot of those things don't necessarily apply to that situation. So there's definitely this fatigue and this feeling that even the things that are relevant to them, they're not particularly engaged with them. We know that as well that a large number of people during the pandemic shifted from some more of the physical items that you have, so out of home, door drop campaigns, for example, print advertising, billboards. We knew that because of the fact that people weren't out and about, people moved a lot of their marketing to digital methods, so pay-per-click, for example, but also email. And we know that a good portion of those emails are completely irrelevant to the receiver. So this method of providing lead magnets and for providing value-add marketing is really relevant because it allows you to consider your target audience and build something that's going to be of interest to them so that you can actually stand out from this bombardment of irrelevant content. So where do you actually start? From our point of view, I think that we are a very data-led business, and before you really start on any recruitment or marketing project, we think that it's really important to consider how you're actually going to track success for a number of reasons, really. One, to know whether you've actually been successful, but two, for the fact that you want to be able to improve things over time. So hopefully you'll be using these lead magnets and having success initially, but there is potential, if you're tracking those metrics, to improve each time you generate a lead magnet, improve the quality of them, improve the success rate with them. It's also important with marketing, especially for the education sector, we do quite often see this. It's important not just to focus on the beginning of the funnel. So we've got X number of click-throughs, therefore it was really successful. By tracking success all the way through your marketing funnel, you can make sure that you understand where people are coming from. You might have multiple lead magnets out there that you're using to attract people. Some of those things might be a prospectus or a brochure. If those things are being downloaded and that you are converting people through them, you should be able to find those things out by tracking your metrics, tracking goals in Google Tag Manager, for example, and setting goals in Google Analytics so that you can see the entirety of that funnel, and you can invest money improving the areas that perhaps aren't working so well, either removing them and replacing them or just improving them so that they are more successful. And those things that are working well, you don't want to be watering those down, you don't want to be removing them from your marketing scheme. So the vast majority of this session is really going to be talking about what could you be providing to your audience. So from a school's point of view, we've looked at this and we've considered what we've seen out there as to be working well. We put some things in there that we've come up with as new ideas because we thought that this session would be most valuable if you could actually go away and you could implement some of this way of marketing in your own school. So the most common three areas that we have seen for people to generate people to inquire, parents to inquire, traditionally has been the webinar, white paper and ebook categories of lead magnets. And the reason that we believe that people started out with those is because simply they were the areas that other sectors used. Sectors created quite a bit of content through white papers. They provided free webinars such as this one, and they also created ebooks to give people some information about a variety of different things. So for a school, that white paper, you might be an independent school or you might be a trust, just as two examples. So an independent school, you might be writing a white paper about research that shows the importance of a single-sex school. If a single-sex school, the positives, the negatives, a well-rounded view of it, so that you could be marketing that out so that people who are considering sending their child to a single-sex independent school could be reading more about it and then be connecting your brand with that white paper. You'll have good brand recognition, but you also have really good engagement. You can have this on your website. But I do see these things working really, really well on both paid for and free social media channels. Webinars work really well. So pick topics that people are going to find really important. So it might be a webinar on helping people to pick an appropriate school for their child, and talk them through that process. So for example, how could they be considering how academic their child is, how sporty their child is, what kind of pastoral support are they going to need, and how could they then find the schools that can provide that. And ebooks are very similar to white papers, but they're less research focused. They're more your opinion on a particular topic. I really like ebooks done by head teachers. I think they're a great way to get your thought leadership out there, get your brand recognition out there. It's great for the head teacher because it also gets their name out there, and it allows for a bit of consistency. You can talk about topics that head teacher is leading on and has been implementing within your school. So for example, it might be that they've got a really strong belief that sport can benefit children with STEM subjects because there's been a lot of research on that. So they could talk about their own experiences of that. They could talk about what they've seen within the school, their plan for the school. So people could be filling in their email address and their details to download this ebook so they could read more about it and understand how they can support their own child through sport and the connection with STEM subjects. Templates and resources are really, really useful. We've seen this work pretty well during the pandemic. So for example, templates could be something like a template to complete for selecting which school your child would be best suited for. So it could be a template with 4 or 5 different categories, maybe an Excel spreadsheet, where they can score the school on each of those different areas to help them pick the most appropriate school for them. Or it could be resources. I've seen lots of resources around how to support your child through exam stress, for example. Lots of resources during the pandemic came out about how do you help your child learning from home? What can you give them to get them through a difficult period of time? What can you do to help keep them on track? Free trials might seem a very strange one for a school. I have seen this actually work well for schools. So as an example, it doesn't have to have a nursery, but as an example, I've seen this with a few nurseries within schools. They've given them taster days and they've given them free sessions that they can come along to. So they call them fun days, for example. Their children can come along. They can experience what it's like to be in that environment, the toys that they've got, the care of the staff, the food, a variety of different things that you might be pitching your nursery or your school with. And they work really well because the parents get to see the physical environment. It's a great opportunity to help that child to have a fun day. And sometimes even it's unsupervised by the parent, and sometimes it's supervised by the parent. So there's lots of different options that you can have there. But they're really useful things so that you can get across that experience that the children will be having. Evaluations with a report. So this is taken from other sectors, really. So evaluations of a report is basically where somebody completes a survey or a form to evaluate something, and then you come back to them with a report. There's lots of stupid ones out there. So for example, ones relating to which TV character are you, for example, and you complete surveys. But from a professional marketing perspective, these things can actually be really helpful. So we talk quite a bit about selecting the best school because it's a really nice lead magnet to have. So this could be a series of questions that you complete, and then they get back some kind of feedback as, okay, this is the type of school that you're looking for. Or maybe even these are the types of questions you should be asking when you have a guided tour of your school. Things where you're getting something back that's quite bespoke works really well. I do really like the ones where it gives you questions to ask, because parents quite often struggle with that. They might be completely new to picking a school, and therefore putting in some information about their child, either maybe kind of yes, no boxes, or scoring things about how much enjoyment their child gets from different areas might give some really valuable questions for them that they can use, hopefully, when they visit your school, but in their search for their next school for their child, or their first school for their child. Training videos are really great. I really like this for home education. So parents might be helping their child prepare for an exam at home over the summer holidays or the Easter holidays. Videos engage really well with audiences on social media at the moment. They traditionally have, but there's been an increase in this. Make sure you've got subtitles on there so that people can watch them without sound. That tends to increase the engagement. But training videos on certain things. So, for example, you might have your head of science talking through what kind of small science projects could you do over the summer holidays to keep your child engaged in the subject. There might be little experiments that you could do in the kitchen. There might be things you could do in the garden, and so on and so forth. But they do tend to get really good engagement, A, because they're video, and B, because they're really useful for everyone, not just that initial bubble you have within your target audience. Case studies are really, really great. So case studies about maybe a journey from one of your pupils that's joined your school would be really useful. So what was their first week like? It A, positions you as great in terms of that onboarding experience for the new child, and B, it helps those parents because it gives them an idea of what that first week's going to be like, and they can help plan for it. They can help prepare their child. So it's got additional benefits. They will be engaged in these things because they know that they're going to be useful for them at some point. And you can have a whole variety of case studies. They could be for different processes and parts of those processes within the search for a new school. So it could be a case study for a child moving from one area of the UK to another area. So how could you support a child through that experience? Metrics. I have seen this work in educational organizations. I think it could be a good idea for schools, but I've never seen it used for schools. So the idea is that you share metrics that people are going to find interesting and that people are going to find useful. So for example, the only one that I can think of that I have seen used for a school is I've seen a independent prep school. And the prep school looked at the impact of investing in your child's education in at a secondary level and a primary level, so a pre-prep level. And they had lots of data and lots of metrics around why, if you're going to send your child to an independent school only for part of their education, how investing that money in the prep stage has a significant impact. So they were trying to encourage people to think of it from that point of view, that they're better to start off in a prep school, and if they have to, or if parents would like them to, move on to a state school rather than start in state school and move into an independent school. So they dotted these metrics around their website, and it was the golden thread that kind of tied together their marketing, tied together the content that they were sharing. Benchmarking is really relevant for parents. I think that when you're looking at a school, it's very difficult when somebody tells you something to say, is this particularly good or is it particularly bad? So guides and resources that they could be using to benchmark you would be really useful, but also your own benchmarking. So how do you compare to other places? So for example, sports might be a good area. Your school might have a particularly good sports department. How do you compare against other schools? It might feel a little bit cheesy, but it could be done in quite a fun way and quite an engaging way as well. Guides to particular things are always going to be very popular with your target audience. You just need to pick the right topic. So guides might be, say for example, the time frame, a guide to the time frame of picking your first school for your child. So at what point of the year should you be doing research? When should you be attending tours? When should you be contacting head teachers? Who should you be contacting? Is the head teacher correct? Should it be somebody within a particular department? How does the process work? Creating guides are really good to focus down on a particular target audience. If you've identified that your target audience is mainly made up of X, Y, and Z parents, build a guide that's useful to that group of parents. Polls and survey results are really, really like these on LinkedIn. You've got the ability when you create a post to create a poll on LinkedIn. You can poll people on particular things. So it might be relevant to poll people about how early on do they start deciding which school to send their child to. You can then poll for a series of questions, and then when you've got those results, that gives you an additional social media post because you can be posting those results to people. Tips and advice, really like this as a very quick one. You can go to academic members of staff, for example, and you could be taking their tips and their tricks, and you could be sharing that on your social media. It's really nice to have these because it gives you an insight into the culture, the things that you find important. And I've seen this done for a range of different members of staff. You could be doing it for from your IT team, for example. Do they have any tips about keeping children safe online? Do they have any tips about cybersecurity? You could be doing this from catering staff. Do they have any recipes that they could be sharing? Do they have anything that's particularly popular with the students? And then I've added one on here just because although you might not be involved in this area, we do find that a lot of our marketing contacts, they've also got some kind of element of employer branding and recruitment of staff involved. So at the moment, we know that where people are providing free CV support, even if it's just feedback during the recruitment process, they're getting significant improvement in their engagement with their marketing. Does anybody have any questions about the examples that I've given about lead magnets and value add items that you could be sharing? Perfect. So when you go away and hopefully you've seen some things that you like the sound of and you're considering, when you go away, I think the biggest challenge that you're going to face is the lack of time and resource. So actually finding somebody to create these. Whatever you create, you're going to want it to be branded, because the whole point is that it's increasing your brand reach. The whole point is that when people come back to those items, it reminds them of your brand. It's really important to make sure that whatever you select is not just fun and engaging for you, but it also aligns with your target audience. Don't just see your target audience as a whole, segment it and pick relevant lead magnets for each of those areas. So it might be people moving their child to your school, for example, create a lead magnet for them. It might be people where they're selecting your school as the first school they've ever picked for their child. Create a lead magnet for them. It might be people who are actively looking, but they're not really too aware of your school. Create a lead magnet for them. Build lead magnets that are targeted at segments of your target audience. Don't just make it generic. Your ability to then reach a target audience. So for recruitment, we know this is really difficult for IT candidates, for example, and for social media channels and pay-per-click campaigns and even kind of those organic channels that you might be using. We know that it's difficult to get these things pushed out to those target audiences. So consider where you're going to invest money without kind of pushing bright too much. That is something that we can definitely help you with. So running campaigns that kind of push these lead magnets out to the right people. And then finally, the biggest challenge you're going to face is a very crowded marketplace. So just do a little bit of research and make sure that they're not other people pushing out whatever it is that you're looking to introduce. If you're struggling, use things like the gig economy, use marketing agencies, use people who are willing to kind of give you advice about resources and give you feedback. Go and ask your target audience what they're interested in, what do they struggle with, find some of those pain points and build lead magnets based on them. If you are struggling to kind of get out to certain groups of people within that target audience that you've segmented, look at where those communities spend their time. So you're recruiting, if so, it might be LinkedIn. Are you trying to attract parents of a particular demographic? Perhaps pick digital platforms that are targeted towards that audience. Are you trying to get into a very closed community of people? If so, are there any Facebook groups that you could be sharing these contents to, this content to, and therefore make it very targeted towards that target audience? And be as creative as possible. Come up with new ideas that are going to get shared regularly. I was going to say go viral, but it might be difficult the first few times, but potentially going viral at some point within the target audience, because it's so relevant for them and it solves a pain point for them, and free of charge. So the things that we've seen that have been working really well is where you've got a CRM to manage this process for you, automate this journey, become a lot easier, tag everybody in your database with the lead magnet that they downloaded or the multiple lead magnets they downloaded, so you can see those journeys. Ask your colleagues and the people that are your current clients, so current parents, about their pain points. What do they struggle with? How do they struggle with helping their children? And then build lead magnets that help. Be really genuine. If your school's not particularly good at something, don't create lead magnets in that area, because it gives this false oversell of your school or your organization. I've seen this a lot of trusts where they're kind of pushing lead magnets and guides and so on and so forth for areas that they're not particularly renowned with, and there's this kind of jarring feeling of, when they talk to current parents, they're saying, oh, this isn't particularly great. When they're looking at marketing, it's kind of really pushing a particular area. Consider your target audience really carefully, and definitely segment that target audience so that you're focusing on those different areas. And then avoid common options. And this is surprisingly difficult to do, I think, because when you look out there at what other people are marketing, you quite often see things you think, oh, that's really great. But the reason it's great is because it's sharing typically content that's going to help with a very common problem. And if you're going to get creative, you might be able to overcome this, but typically you're going to really struggle to not just repeat the exact same thing that they have. And that tends to just go back to that initial stage of, well, there's marketing fatigue there because everybody's saying the same thing time and time again. So, finished within half an hour going through everything, so there's plenty of time for questions. Does anybody have any questions, or does anybody need any more tips or tricks in terms of lead magnets, or want to kind of ask a question about how they could apply it for their school? Perfect. I'm hoping that that has been very useful for everybody. If you do think of any questions once the masterclass is finished, do come back to me, do let me know. We're in the process of updating our site, so forgive me that they are a little bit dated in terms of their design, but hopefully this has been really useful. And as I say, email me any questions that you might have. But thank you very much for attending.